but we have completely different approaches to how we do healthy living. So that's, I mean, that's sort of, so Elsie does all these sports. I mean,
No.
Well, you do. She's a champion bocce ball this year.
Oh.
And
No,
she does
I'm the person
croquet.
that they all wanted to be a partner with because I do so poorly, but
No.
it was a fluke the day that they had
You
to
can't take the championship away from you, dear. And she does croquet, and she does badminton. Not badminton, but ping pong three or four times a week or something.
Well,
like that.
I don't get there every time.
Well,
Maybe
but anyway,
twice,
so she does sports, but I am totally unathletic. So I do stuff like the water aerobics, and I work on a machine because I can't walk very far. She walks. You walk with your friend. What is it, 2 some miles? When we went to the beach 2 days ago, you walk 4 or 5 miles or something like that.
Yeah.
5 miles.
Wow.
But anyway, I can't walk very long without. I have so many life-threatening illnesses. It's a joke to talk about me in healthy living. I've got, pulmonary hypertension. I've got cardiomyopathy. I've got diabetes. My kidneys are no good. And plus a hunch. So really, it's kind of silly. But anyway, I can't walk very far without a walker. But I can do things in the water. So I do a lot of water aerobics about 4 times a week now. And I work on a machine every day. About the last 7 weeks, I think, I've been on the machine. It's called a recumbent. You're sitting down, you won't lose your arms and legs, but you can do it, so you don't have not carrying all your weight.
Right.
And what else? I want to do all those body benders stuff, the kind of things that she does by herself, I do in a class because I don't have enough discipline to do it on my own.
Yeah.
So we're just we're
Boring big sister.
what are you
No,
talking
you get
about?
the picture.
You have discipline. You go to class.
Well, no.
Oh my gosh.
I respond to the expectations of other people. They'll ask where were
I'm
you,
a
so
bundle of
then,
other people's
so,
expectations.
So I do respond to other people's expectations pretty better than to myself. And I sort of live by projects. I have also, this is another way we're sort of different. I always have a project going right now. I've got probably too many projects going at once, but anyway, because that way it kind of structures your life, your day, and so forth.
Right.
Sometimes it's sewing, sometimes it's cooking. So right now I'm working on a dollhouse that I've had for 30 years. That I thought, throw it out or fix it one way or the other. So, but I sort of work my life around projects, and every morning I think, what am I going to do today, and kind of try to, structure them. And I
you
think that
have
works well for
something
me.
to do every day.
Well, now see,
Y'all are
her
busy.
husband, Elsie, has built in. Her husband is in a healthcare center, and she's there 3 or 4 times a day. Walks over there, climbs the stairs, and all that kind of stuff.
I don't use the elevators here because, I don't go to these classes that she goes to, but I do these other things.
Yes.
And I do have a friend. We go around Shelley Lake every week. But that's only 2 miles. So another friend and I sometimes go, or we do Lakeland. Or someone, and then Springmore sponsors. They've had
Walks
several
and things,
fall hikes that I've been on, but again, it's there's no requirement that you walk fast. So I'm not saying that this is aerobic. At the beach, that second time I went without the 89-year-old when I walked the longer distance, I really did keep up the pace pretty well. Not aerobic, but I didn't pick up shells. That
Yeah.
You were moving.
You were exercising.
Yeah.
Can I ask y'all? This might be rude. You're told never to do this, but how old you are?
Oh yeah. I'm going to be 80 on December 10th.
Okay.
and I'm 82.
You're 82. Okay.
And she's the little sister who did everything
But
first.
I'm the fat sister. When I look like it, when anybody looks at me and think, of course she has diabetes. Elsie has diabetes too. That's probably, a family connection, maybe the same one that gave us
Well,
the
I
back.
just take pills. She
But
has
I have, when they put me on insulin, I gained 40 pounds. So it's not really fair to say I got diabetes because I was fat. I was overweight, but I wasn't fat. But since I've been on insulin, I'm now obese. So isn't that funny? Yeah.
You're kidding.
No, I'm not kidding.
Well, you look great.
You do.
And I
No.
just, it's very, that's sort of discouraging. But I guess I don't care enough to do anything about it. I'm just sort of eating away. But anyway.
I've had your food.
Pardon?
I've had your food, and I can understand why you She is absolutely one of the best cooks.
Is
I'm
she?
actually cooking this morning along with some other things.
She cooks for Win.
And
Elsie would coordinate volunteers for Win. Win is Wake Interfaith Hospitality
Okay.
we
Network.
have the homeless families 3 or 4 times a year for a week, but they don't spend the day with us.
Okay.
But they're there for dinner, pack a lunch, have breakfast. And I only do a little section of that volunteer. That's the evening hospitality, and that's when I'm hounding them. Her boys Adam and Troy, even when they were little kids, were wonderful with the homeless children.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and of course now they're what, middle school and high school?
High school, yeah.
High school and middle school.
Yep.
I did have it right. I don't have ages written down, but
That's
I guess
good.
I knew them practically before. I guess when they were born.
I think she knew them before they were.
Because you just had your daughter, didn't
Yeah.
you, when you came to the?
Yeah.
She knows them before they were born. I think.
Well, yeah, pretty much.
Well, I try to keep up with the
Yeah.
kids.
Oh,
and-
she's amazing. She
Well,
knows where
she's
everybody's
kept
been.
the
She knows
kids,
where everybody's grandchild is going to college and stuff. And she'll say, "Oh yes, he was in my class." I mean, it's wonderful. It's amazing.
Yeah, I did
What
It
she
is.
remembers.
teach off and on in the youth division at church for. They say 36 years, but you can't take yourself seriously. You have to be willing to laugh at yourself.
You do.
And I was never dogmatic. We had discussions. I
Yeah.
wouldn't fit in some churches.
But you need those discussions. They learn better. They just, they really do. They take in more when you do that. So that was wonderful. Do you, every day, is there something, a routine that you do? And as far as socially and physically?
Yeah.
I know you do the exercise, in both of you. You walk just because out of necessity.
Well,
If she climbs stairs, she could take the
well,
elevator.
you do also. You walk around
Yeah.
Lakeland,
and we're in independent living, which means you get one meal a day. If you don't use it, and this is the only retirement place that has this, you just accumulate those dollars and you have guests. So I keep having guests. I've had a lot of people from church, people that really should be thinking about the future, but if you wait till you need to come, you probably have waited
too long.
because there's so many things you can do here, but I'm not in a way as disciplined as you are, because there are mornings when I did do some exercises this morning, not the whole list, but I intend to every morning.
But also, you often have appointments you're taking Jim to. She has a lot of things going on in connection with her husband that I.
Well, I ride
don't.
along. I mean,
Yeah,
he
but
has to
you
go in the
don't.
wheelchair van now. I mean, he's mentally fine, but he gave up PT. For years, I was taking him to Rex Wellness Center 3 times a week, and he would tell people, he's 93 now, but he would tell people, well, I have no choice, I have to, meaning he knew he'd get weak. He got here and did it for 1 year, and he got in the health center, and he decided, when he realized they really weren't going to let him come back to the apartment,
Right.
he just lies around. He doesn't, his parents lived to the 90s, so.
Well, it's amazing he hasn't gotten pneumonia.
No, they say, oh, you'll get pneumonia if you lie around all. Not Jim. I mean, he's got wonderful genes. And there's no guarantee that I will outlive him, even though he's 11 years older.
Right.
But we're in the right place, because they'll take care of him the rest of his life.
Right.
And this is the kind of place, they don't expect your money to run out because you don't come in. See,
They won't let you in.
That's right.
They think your money's going to run out. They won't let you in.
Well, my mother was
Yeah.
30. My mother was 30. Our mother was 38 when she was widowed, but she ended up working. She, of course, wasn't working when our father died. He was head of sociology at University of Maryland, and she was only 6 when he died.
Oh.
But she's the one that looked like him, and But he died at 41. Well, no, she worked till she was 70, and she could, by selling her house, she could move into a continuing care retirement
Right.
in a Washington area. And she said she wasn't used to such luxury. Well, I feel the same way. I mean, a lot of people have gorgeous stuff, and that's hard for some people to leave their home. I never had any gorgeous stuff. I had Jim's mahogany furniture from his first marriage, 60 years ago. And, but I don't have stuff, so that
Right.
wasn't a big issue with me. But anyway, no, we have a lot of social life because we eat dinner with other people, and somebody moved in 2.5 years ago who won't show up at dinner if I don't stop and get her. So much for independent living.
Yeah.
These people, there are plenty of people in independent living that are really not quite.
Right.
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 But it's all right. So we so we eat with other people, and she plays a lot more bridge than I do. But that
and I
involves
play
a variety.
rummy cube.
And now, oh my God.
Elsie's astonished at my playing
Well,
rummy
she
cube.
can't take a nap. I mean, she
Well.
has a breathing thing, so she sits up to sleep at night in a chair, and she can't just like me lie down here with a magazine at doze off in the afternoon.
Well, I'm not supposed to sleep without it because I don't breathe. If I don't
Is it sleep
have the mask
apnea?
on,
Yeah, but
if
hers
I don't-
is severe.
I have to have bilevel. It has to be. I have to be forced to breathe. It's not the usual one.
Oh,
It's a
okay.
more expensive one that you
okay.
have to be. That makes me breathe.
Yeah, but
And,
it's just, how many
so-
times did you stop breathing when they tested you?
Oh, honey, I don't remember.
But
But
you
it was,
was
the
30
woman said it was about the almost or among the worst cases she'd ever seen, and so it was.
Yeah,
it was pretty
35
severe.
seconds you
I don't
didn't
know,
draw
something
your
like
breath.
that. I don't
you
know.
know.
It was that
So
my
she
blood
can't
oxygen
just-
got down to
so
around
she
70.
plays
Which is
at
not good.
games. If she's not reading a book in one day, which she can do, she is busy.
Well, I tell you one
She
reason
can't
why
lie down.
one reason why I do the rummy cube and the bridge is that a lot of the women are very, very lonely. And now, I mean, when I see the men and the women around here who are devoting their lives to caring for, their husband or wife who's not with them anymore. I mean, they're advanced Alzheimer's, advanced dementia, whatever.
Right.
And I'll admit, I'm glad not to be in that situation.
Sure.
But a lot of there's of course many of the women here are widows, and it's that early evening time tends to be kind of the difficult time, I think,
Right.
after dinner. So
Sundown.
that's when I think it's really nice
She
to
plays rummy
play
cube.
rummy cube or bridge or something, because it kind of picks up those hours that when otherwise you might be getting in the
But
doldrums.
two of the women
Right.
had a falling out, so now the one
Now-
that won't play with the evening group, she plays one-on-one with her every afternoon and Sunday
Some
evening.
afternoons. But anyway, yeah. Well, I really, really understand. I mean, the loneliness thing and how, I mean, nothing really takes it away. I'm working with making friends with a woman in the South Village who's lost both.
Part of Springmore's across the street.
Who lost both her
They have their
husband
own
and a
dining room
daughter,
and post office.
like within a year, and it's got 2 years. I mean, she's in really kind of bad shape, and it's and of course some of them are on antidepressants, but a lot of them just have a hurt that isn't going to go away. I mean, it gets a little better over time, but they don't have a naturally, kind of.
They weren't
Elsie-
born optimists.
Yes, Elsie and I were
No.
raised to be. Elsie and I were
Yeah.
raised toward what Springmore says, a positive mental attitude. That's how we were raised.
Yeah,
That's what
because
our
mother
mother
had
told
every
me.
reason. She lost her only son, her husband when he was 41, her only son when he was 44, and then she had the two of us left, and who were married several times.
Yes.
Oh well,
So it was, she had every reason to be down, but she never got down.
No, she was.
She never showed that she ever got down then.
It's a
and
choice.
lived to 91.
It's
Yeah.
a choice.
She was a widow, 53 years.
But some of the ladies are really, really pretty sad, and it's kind of hard to.
Right.
But anyway, all you can do is just kind of listen, and that's what I try
And
to
be
do.
there.
Mhm.
And it sounds like you wake up each day and you look for how can I be of service? You really see people
above
for
and
where
beyond.
they're at.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if I think about it sort of that specifically, but
in
You
the
do.
health center, I've learned the
Elsie-
names of a lot of patients that
Yeah,
are just
Elsie's
sitting in
one,
chairs,
yeah.
because they're. But I've learned their names. I can speak to them. I've learned the names of just many of the CNAs, the certified nursing assistants, and the RNs and so on. And Jim had a huge stamp collection. Of course, he's blonde, but so he's very interested in what countries these people are from. And the CNAs, a lot of them from Africa who work the 3 to 11 shift, and they're, I think, going to Wake Tech in the daytime. Some of them were registered nurses back in their home countries. But, one from Kenya, one from Nigeria, one from Togo, one Ivory Coast, 2 from Ethiopia, and
the
so
same
Jim will
thing with
say,
Lacey, yeah.
so one day, because he can't see, I mean, he has some peripheral vision. He can steer his wheelchair through narrow spaces, but he can't see faces of the food on his plate. And he said, Andrew's from Arkansas.
Oh,
Well, I mean, in the daytime shift, there were a lot of them.
yeah.
Native American, well, not native in the sense of,
Right.
yeah.
Born-
But anyway,
born
they were
Americans.
born in the U.S. And of course, some of them know about sports, from back away. So
Sure.
Jim can talk with them about that.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
but I do try to interact a lot with and learn, a lot of the staff over there in the health center. I know their names and encouraging word because it's very challenging for them to deal with. Because I would
It
say the
is.
majority of people in the healthcare center have dementia. There is a special unit for the ambulatory ones who need sort of double locking
Right.
because they would wander.
Right.
They have many activities for them, and there are many activities. Jim he's sort of an introverted ex-college professor, and he just really doesn't. And he found that because he's okay in the mind, they let him make decisions. So he would prefer not to get dressed and go to meals. He did it for a year. And he said the men at his table never said anything, and he, being the introvert, isn't going to initiate in conversation. So he just said, I can just stay in my room and have my meals, and I won't have to get dressed. Well, of course, he gets dressed when he has appointments, and he looks nice. And of course, the nurse said, "Wow, look at Mr. Reed," But
how does he feel being, having such
being so sharp, but then being there?
Well, I'm sure he's on antidepressant for sure.
Yeah.
I think one time they thought because of the guidelines you're supposed to take him off, and he's still a little unpredictable. Once he was there, I used to not leave him overnight for a number of years. When he was blind and had a big heart attack 10 years ago. But see, he's got heart failure, just like Elizabeth. But and he's also on the brink of kidney failure. But he's got the skinny ankles. And he's been on the brink of kidney failure for 23 years, but it's stable. The numbers are stable, and he's and whereas with heart failure and kidney failure, you do the opposite. You need a lot of diuretic for the heart failure, but you can't do that if you got the bad kidney. So Elizabeth's in that terrible in between. But somehow they've been able to greatly lower his blood pressure medication. But he doesn't like it there. And he sort of resisted learning the name Springmore. I'm convinced he knows. He knows a lot of things going on. But I think it wasn't his idea to come. But he was the oldest of 4 children. His parents migrated from Kansas City, Missouri, out to California in the 1940s. When they got to be in their 90s, and Jim was in Raleigh, and even though siblings were out there, he was making trips out there, and sometimes. But I worked a lot longer than he did because he's older. He was retired 13 years before I retired. But anyway, they needed additional care. They had to go to facilities. So he knows if you live a long time. But it's still not his choice. And I owned the house. I had known him for 20 years, and his previous wife, who had MS and had died. They were members of the church, but I knew them even before they came to Raleigh. But anyway, so I knew the only way the marriage would work would be if we kept the money separate, because I knew he was very controlling, and so I never put his name on the house. And my first husband was so glad to leave, he let me have the house. So he's a professor at State, and present, both named Jim. I do recommend that when you remarry, stay with the same first name. He calls me Grace, but I knew her; she was my good friend, so it's all right. But anyway. So I sold the house that he had lived in for 31 years the day before we moved to Springmore, and he had to come. I mean, it was sort of, in a way you could say that was mean, but it was the responsible thing to do.
Right.
Because this way, I was still cutting grass. I know I could pull that cord on the mower. I know I could, but that's
I remember
not the issue.
You planting trays of pansies.
Well, I've got you can see my begonias out here. This is so nice to be second floor but ground level because of the way the land slopes.
Yeah.
So I have flowers out there, and I don't even look at a parking lot.
Right, it's a beautiful view.
It's just incredible.
It is.
But there are people who are fearful. There's some of our friends who wouldn't want to live ground level. They like being on that side of the building on the second or third floor because they don't want this kind of deal. I've come back. I think one time when I was gone for a weekend, I found this door unlocked. What the? It's so safe here. It's just incredible. And that's what Mother said about the retirement center. That she had lived right in Washington D.C. and was very gung ho, but she said she did feel so safe, and she was warm because she wouldn't turn her thermostat up.
That's right.
Because we're so hot natured that
we couldn't.
Air conditioner will come on any minute here. So it's but Elizabeth is it's involved a lot of things that I don't do, and
I do a lot of things that I don't do. So they're very different sorts of things. Yeah.
That's good. And then you do a lot of things together.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that's perfect. Very nice. Well, tell me about you're going to occupy Raleigh.
Yeah.
Oh yes, I should have brought the picture. The hysterical thing is that our financial advisor our financial advisor is the one who found it. Downloaded. Well, he got his assistant.
It was on the internet, apparently.
It was on the internet.
WRL.
So it's hysterical. Of course, I really had one. Thought, well, really, should we really go down there but it's so hypocritical because I have money invested. I mean, I have, but it was sort of be to support the people who were. When we go back down, I think I can pull it for you and show it to you.
Yeah,
it's hysterical.
We heard. Young woman speak that lost her job. She was a single mom with a couple of kids, and somebody else, big health issues.
I mean, all these terrible things that people are going through. And also, I'll admit that I was doing my exercise. Usually I try to do real early in the morning when there's nobody else wants the machine. But one time I went in the evening, and a woman who lives here sitting next to me, she had Fox News on, and they were describing the people as being, outlaws, punks, hippies, stuff like that. I thought, I'm going to march. I'm going to go, It was kind of...
This our financial advisor doesn't really see the news on the TV, but he can, watch on the computer. And, of course, this was never in the News and Observer. I think an Observer guy interviewed you. She was the one holding the big sign that she had made. But anyway, Oh, well, you said we're in the SBI files because she taught criminology, and so some of the guys with this is back when it wasn't kosher to demonstrate for civil rights.
This was the Vietnam War. This is 1967 in front of the Federal Post Office because it was sort of the symbol of the federal government, and it was specifically protesting the bombing of North Vietnam civilian targets. It wasn't, a totally anti-war thing.
Right.
And actually, of course, this was when Johnson was president, and he did actually stop the bombing. I mean, he really did. But it was, but there were, we were, and they took our pictures pretty constantly, so I'm pretty sure I'm somewhere in some file.
Well, but I think even some of the civil rights stuff. It was a hoot when it finally became an official. Martin Luther King birthday became an official holiday, and states and cities sponsored events because I went when it was suspect. If you
that's right. So. But we're old time protesters. I was in. I went to the January rally in 2003. And my health really wasn't good enough for me to do it, but I went anyway. It was in Washington. It was bitter cold. This is 2 months before they started. It was a protest. We all knew there was going to be a war, and there was a huge demonstration. Of course, it made no difference, but I wasn't sure. I thought this.
She was living in Winston-Salem.
Yeah, if I die on the route, at least it'll be dramatic. The elderly woman drops dead protesting war. But anyway, of course, I had a big sign, the same old stuff. But it was extremely cold. But there was such a mob that you just walked 3 or 4 steps and stopped. So I was able to do it. But there was just such enormous numbers of people. There was a bus going from. Yeah, I went on a bus. Yeah, but anyway, that's not really germane, I don't think, except that I don't mean to say that I protest everything, but I'm trying to be selective in my protest.
Well, because
I protested for civil rights, for Vietnam War, for the for the Iraq War, and we also were there for Mother's Million Mother Against Handguns.
Yeah, up in Washington, we were in a separate group because she had. Besides her beach house, she had a condo in Winston. So some of these things, like that Million Mile March, I went from Raleigh with a friend, and she went.
I think actually it was a Meredith bus. Now that I really think it was, but I can't quite remember how that worked out. But I think that somehow it was related. But anyway.
No, and see, the point is, the way we were raised, you try to look at what's best for most of the people, not just at your own personal situation. And when President Reagan was running for re-election, I got a phone call and they said, "Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?" Well, the interest rates were up. I was getting 14% interest on my savings and profit shared plan with J.C. Penney Company. Of course things were mushrooming up, but I said, I do not vote on just my personal situation. I look at the big picture and see what's best for most people.
That's right.
So that's just how we were.
However, we have to be very careful around here because, of course, there are many conservative people, and you're really not allowed. You're not supposed to talk politics or be involved. Openly.
Once in a while, you get to know somebody well enough. That couple that go to the Unitarian Church on Wade Avenue, they're a safe bet. They're.
But you have to be a little careful because you don't want to upset people. Yeah. And I teach Sunday school, and I try in West Raleigh. And I taught it when I was in my 20s. That's the first adult teaching I ever did, was for the same class of women.
Alice Broom class.
Alice Broom
she
class.
was in her 20s and she taught the Alice Broom class.
Now I'm in my almost 80s and teaching the Alice Broom class. And but anyway, I try to be a little careful, because I don't want to offend people or whatever, either in terms of religious beliefs or whatever. But they're a pretty with it bunch. They may be
they are
elderly, but they're pretty much with it. So I think that there are people here who just are really not happy with being here, not happy with themselves and so forth. And it's kind of sad because it's really, you might as well not be that way if you can help it.
Yeah.
And
but you see, it's not their own decision.
Yeah.
See, if people wait till their children have to do something, it's very different from thinking it through. It's true. I say, generally speaking, it's harder for a man to move here unless he has a wife with dementia.
Yeah,
they come.
They need help. Yeah.
Definitely.
Oh yeah. Well, tell me. It sounds like passion is a big thing that keeps you healthy when you're aging, and you just shine. Your life is so full. It's fuller than most
we should at least
people.
mention children and grandchildren. I've got 8 grandchildren, 7 boys and 1 girl, and 2 of the boys are married. So you could say I'm almost up to the point of having maybe 10 grandchildren if you count the daughters-in-law, and one great grandchild. But the family is extremely important. I have a daughter here, one in Winston and one in Colorado, and Elsie's the same way. So family stuff is, which we haven't mentioned, but I think it's really important to say that, I think that is some of the people here really have nobody. They maybe have had a child, but they don't have grandchildren or whatever. Or they're not here. They're away, and I think that makes it very difficult.
I live out of state, and I have had very little involvement. I only have 3 grandchildren. I've had very little involvement with them, and because one's in Indiana and 2 in Virginia, and so Elizabeth has had much more involvement. She knows a whole lot more. As my first husband said when the oldest one went up to Vassar, you have to get used to knowing a great deal less.
Well, and sometimes you wish you didn't.
A blessing.
Yes, sometimes you wish you do know. Sometimes I wish I did know less. But I'm extremely involved.
And there's just loads that I don't know actually with this, because I just have the 3 granddaughters who are range from 19 to 22. Say 2 in Virginia, 1 in Indiana. So. And I don't know when they would ever get married. About this thing about great grandchild. I'm the older one, but
Well, I don't know if I'll have more than 1 or not. But anyway, like this morning, just to think about today, I've got a grandson, my oldest grandson, who has some very, very serious issues. He's been doing pretty well, but he's in a kind of a crisis mode right now. So I'm packing him up some chocolate chip cookies and fudge. And a hoodie that has his right now he's in college with studying accounting, so it says account. Trying to preserve the idea you want to stay in college, get your degree. Yeah. And I'm going to get that off to him today. His birthday is Halloween, and hopefully if I get it off this afternoon, he'll get it okay. Because he's just over in Wilson. It's only an hour away. But anyway, so that's sort of one of the things that's going on today. And I'm cooking for my daughter. I like to cook for her once a week and make her a meal. That's a rather long.
More than a meal.
Well, it's a lot.
It's a production, huh?
It's a lot. It's kind of a long story, but anyway, so I try to cook for her once a week just for fun. So that's sort of what was going on today.
Wow.
And to say we're going to start this thing this evening, which I've done no preparation for. I guess
were you supposed to?
No, I don't think so. They're going to give us a book to read, but we don't have it yet. So
okay, well,
this is the orientation.
Yes, and it's at church, and it's. Goes on from
7 to 9. Keep going,
many weeks now. All those other the few times where it's just 7 to 8:30 when it's the spiritual.
Yeah, but that's still. I wanted the Thursdays.
Yes.
Keep on Thursdays.
That's right, because we're keeping Thursday open. We're not in the choir.
Yeah.
She sings alto.
No, but I have no breath anymore.
You wouldn't know it today.
No, that's true. That's true, but I can't hold notes anymore at all.
Well, tell me about, you're well versed in knowing the population. Tell me about the challenges you see in, as you're aging.
People in independent living maybe versus people living in the health center. What?
Yeah, and then there's in between. There's a supportive living area too, when they get
or
3 meals
just
a
in
day.
general, because you're pretty aware.
Well, I think that it's, you know, when you talk about who's a poster child for, you know, retirement home, they generally show people fairly young coming in, you know, after they've retired, but before they get, you know, and but there aren't a whole lot of people like that here. I mean, most of the people are, I would say, I mean, I guess what didn't you say the average age was 86 or something
That's
like that?
some years ago.
Okay. So people are coming in, and people are coming in later than they used to.
Staying
I
home
think.
longer.
Staying out longer before. I think that's my general impression. So that we're turning into an older group, I would think, probably. But there's a shading. There are people in independent living who probably really need to be and supportive, but they have friends who kind of keep them going and kind of, you know, see that they get to eat and stuff like that. And then there's some in supportive that maybe, you know, need to be in healthcare. But go ahead, Elsie.
Well,
you know much more about that.
in supportive living, they are not medically assisted. I mean, they may be given the pills that it's nobody's standing there and watching them take them.
Right.
You know, maybe at their place at the table or something. You know.
So
I think that the few people that come in younger, some of them have a house at the lake, the beach, the mountains, and they sell their Raleigh home and move into a house here. You know, where they're still in a house, but they don't have to maintain it. So their maintenance efforts are all at their vacation spot. So some of those people come in sooner. And but it varies enormously. There are people that from the time they move in, even if they're independent living, they're not dealing with any of their business mail or anything. Whereas I think that Cleo at 92 is still writing checks. Don't you get that impression?
Yeah, I do. But
I mean, you know, so I mean, it varies a lot. Because she doesn't even have any gray hair. She's blonde. I mean, it's just, you know.
She's an amazing person, yes.
Yeah. So it's such a variety.
And you can't really tell ages. We're all sort of the same. I mean, some younger people look older and older people who look younger. So it's, you know, I don't think of it like there being much age gradation.
That it's, of course, in the health center, the majority have some level of dementia. And I think at one time that was one of Jim's classifications, but it is, he'll be able to tell me what his weight was when they weighed him this morning when I asked him later today. I was up there earlier, but I forgot to ask him.
Well, there is some variation. There's some people that you wouldn't like, well, like Leslie Siren. I mean, you wouldn't think of her as, you know, when you can have a perfectly reasonable conversation with some of the people there.
Oh, yes.
But many of them
are very few,
yeah.
and they sort of find each other, you know, the ones that can have an intelligent conversation.
But there are many people in the healthcare center who are just, you know, the eyes are, you know, the dull eyes are just kind of, you know.
But if they're not real ambulatory, they're safe just with all the other people.
Right.
But it does, if you spend any time over there, it does make you hope very much for a very, very quick outgoing, you know.
Yes. Yes.
Make sure.
Well, she had a practice run a year ago, July 30th.
Yeah, I had a.
She was at the beach.
And I just lost 9 hours. I just went out somewhere, and I was apparently. Well, anyway, I mean, they don't really know what it was. They finally decided it was a seizure because they couldn't think of what it was. Nobody knows. But it was 9 hours gone, and I just woke up and.
In intensive care.
And I thought, but I figured it was I figured what time it was, 4:45, and I figured it was probably morning instead of evening because it was, you know, still a little bit dark. And I figured out where I was, and I had this wonderful sense of peace. I thought, my gosh, if I'd been dead, I'd never known the difference. And you just walked out, you know. So sort of a nice dress rehearsal.
So you just lost 9 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Was anybody there?
Well, what happened was it was unfortunate. My daughters had been at the beach and they all left a few hours before, which meant they all had to turn around and come back. But anyway, I was there with my granddaughter-in-law and my only grandson, and she'd gone for a night swim. Great grandson. She'd gone for a night swim. And she came back, and this happened about 10 minutes after she came back. So I'll never be allowed to babysit him again. I know that. I mean, you know, she wouldn't trust, and which I wouldn't blame her. And what happened was, the last thing I remember, I made her. I'd asked what kind of pie she wanted. She wanted banana cream.
She had all those family there. Everybody, she of course fixed the thing they liked. I mean, she.
Well, that's okay. Yeah. Anyway, so I just cut her a piece of pie, and I said, I'll have a piece of pie. Cut my piece, and I didn't remember anything after that. Apparently, I walked over to the couch and then just kind of and she couldn't get me. She doesn't think I was unconscious particularly. She says it was as though you were paying attention to something, but it wasn't me. No. So she called 911, and fortunately, I was. I don't want to be resuscitated, but she did the only thing she could. She called, but I did not lose it. I didn't stop breathing, but apparently. But they had me in the, and took me up to Carteret General. And the poor girls had to come back, driving back again and see what was going on. And it was all this stuff about, and they thought I was probably going at it, so they said, who's the power of attorney, who's blah, blah. Oh. And that was kind of hard for my kids, which I knew. But I've been through this with them so many times before, because our mother didn't really want to talk about death. Even though the last 2 weeks, she talked to some other people, but she didn't talk to us. The only thing she said,
turned jaundiced, and she had a liver mass apparently, but it hadn't been.
And she said she wasn't going back to hospital, period, which is probably a good decision. So, and I was reading her Psalms and stuff like that. But the only thing she said to me was, I brought her some. She wanted to put Vaseline up her nose every night. Don't ask me why. And she said, I said, this is an awfully big tube, and she said, you'll be able to use it. That was it. That was the only thing she said. So when in 2002, we thought I was going out, because that's when they found all these problems, plus a bleeding ulcer and a bunch of other stuff. And probably I would have gone out, but they were able to give me. Yeah, they gave me, put me on something called epigen therapy, because I wasn't manufacturing any red blood cells. So it's an artificial hormone, and that sort of saved my life and got me going. But at that time, I realized, this could be it. So I've talked to my girls over and over again about this. But when they're actually faced with it, it's hard.
But she carries her do not resuscitate order in her purse,
told
church, or wherever she is.
I was
okay,
told
so you
to
have
carry
your
it
advance directives in place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I was told to do that.
Yeah.
So I had a living will, but they said you needed this other one.
Mm-hmm.
The most.
The healthcare power of attorney?
Mm-hmm. No, it's not that.
It's the most.
It's called most, medical order, something, and it's signed by the doctor. And
yeah, it's a newer thing than a living will.
And it's better because it just says what about if you stop breathing or your heart stops? Not are you in a permanent vegetative condition or not, like that. Mm-hmm. It deals with would be a stroke or heart thing or something like that.
I haven't even told you, but when I had my appointment recently, I took that with me, and I talked with the doctor, and I ended up not having it do not resuscitate, because I have a pacemaker, so my heart probably isn't going to stop beating even when my brain is gone, but it wasn't about vegetative state. It was about,
it's about
just bringing you back. Mm-hmm. And I just haven't. I've got to tell the girls, because I thought I was going to sign that do not resuscitate, but then I thought I'm not sure, because you're supposed to review it every year.
Right.
Yeah.
So and he made a copy of it, so I still have several copies here that I haven't distributed to wherever I should here. See, doctors from Raleigh Medical Group do come here to see people, but I had been going there since 1974, so I go over there to the office, because I still driving all that.
Right.
But anyway, so this is really odd. I surprised myself, because I thought I was going to say do not resuscitate, and then I just wasn't sure. So about it, and he wasn't either way about it. He
well, I think the doctor who's no longer here, but the doctor who handled mine was just most encouraging to say, that's fine. He was, and I think because he knows that I have massive, health problems, and I guess that more than that, since we don't really know what's going to get me, which is which is going to get me. So I think in my case is a little different, because there's so many things that could happen.
The only problem I have is that it beats too slowly. It's an electrical problem. So the
I've got a
pacemaker
plumbing problem.
Helps the pacemaker helps my heart to keep up with me. It's sort of
well, since both my heart and lungs are not very good, and then I have trouble making red blood cells, you can see that would put more strain on it.
Right.
So the whole thing is
I
really.
don't even need extra vitamin D other than what I get in my calcium pill. I'm outdoors. Well, it's partly how your body. There's no sense why I'm diabetic, actually, because I've been much more careful about what I eat.
It has to be genetic. It just has to be a genetic.
So I just take sort of harmless pills. They don't have bad side effects.
Well, I'm glad you're on the harmless pills, because the reason I'm on insulin is because they told me that the pills I was taking, whatever they were destroying my kidneys. So that's why I had to get off of them. But anywho, so I just feel that if it comes to that there's just so many things that are going to go wrong, I just don't want to go through any more of that. And I particularly am worried about having, more tests and more stuff like that.
We're
that
very
are just
concerned
so,
about
the
the last few
health
months of a
dialysis
person's life. Sometimes.
No, I've already told my nephrologist I will not accept dialysis.
Yeah.
I hope he's got it written down, but I told him that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's hard.
So that's
So on a day-to-day basis, the struggles you face as compared to, say, 40 years ago, I mean, how has your life changed?
Well, let's see, 40 years ago would be what?
Well,
40 from 80 would be 40, okay? Married to a wonderful second husband, 3 children, full-time job, had to look after the yard and the car and everything because he was a quintessential absent-minded professor. Wonderful guy. Lots of parties, lots of, dinner parties and so forth. Not a minute to waste, ever. No time to sit down and do anything. Just constantly, moving. And, but that was okay. But I guess that, and my health was good. If I think about now, I think I have much more freedom of choice as to what I'm going to do.
right.
A great deal more freedom, and nobody's really. The nice thing about being this old, nobody really expects you to be able to do anything. So if you do anything at all, it's like you're this great, competent person, whether you are or not. I loved my life. But the happiest years of my life were the 30s and 40s, and then the 50s. But my husband died when he was 53. I was 55. And I did remarry after that. It was sort of a very, very different situation. So I would never want to change those years or add or subtract anything to them. But I was a super mom, a real, honest to God super mom. I mean, I think that's fair to say.
Oh yeah.
And that was wonderful, and I cherish it. But today I would say that I feel as I am kind of on borrowed time ever since 2002, and I very much want to be useful. I very much want to make a contribution. I don't want to be around if I'm, or and physically incapacitated. I would like to go out, in a quick blaze of glory if I can. And meanwhile, I just want to be as useful as possible. But it is a whole different thing to be able to manage to structure your life around what you want to do, without having to pay too much attention to what everybody else's needs, which is what I've done in the past, of course.
I think you still put a lot of attention to that.
It sounds like you do. Yes. Yeah, you still do. Just
but I don't know. I feel much more as though I'm in a situation of choice. I mean, 40 years ago, I really felt that. I love what I was doing, but it was sort of like, you really had to do. Yeah, you really had to do the things that had to be done constantly. And now I do a lot of stuff, but it's more like what I want to do. That's the way I feel about it. Mm-hmm.
And now your life is still filled with joy, but it's a different kind of joy.
Yeah. Well, that comes from within.
It does.
There's nothing that anybody. I'm in a wonderful situation. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Springmore's great. It's a great place and so forth. But it's the why I'm never depressed, why I'm never bored. I really don't know. It's something from inside.
Yeah. I'd say that.
The something we've been studying are challenges that senior citizens face, and one is depression and isolation, and I think those are interrelated. They're intertwined.
Oh, yeah.
And that's not every senior citizen, and that's what people see.
Right.
So
the stereotype associated.
It's such a stereotype. So it's just.
But here, not only they have, of course, a psychiatrist that comes on, but there's a wonderful psychiatric nurse that my husband would have, I would say he would have benefited from it. Even, I didn't know him in his 20s, but I think he's had, some problems for a long, long time. I mean, his father told him, the oldest of four, you've cost me more than all the other kids put together because of all your surgeries.
Oh.
Well, of course he's
Great
93.
thing to say, Well, Elsie and I both absolutely felt loved. I mean, our mama, even though our dad was great, but of course we didn't have him for very long. But I was just a few years ago talking to a friend I had since kindergarten, and she said, I always wanted to come to your house because it was such a happy place. Well, she had both her parents. She had, she had wealth. They had a beautiful house.
Big stone house.
Yeah, but she never said that when she was a kid. But she said your house was a happy place.
Oh.
So,
yeah, and here we were, without a father.
That's right.
I mean, somehow, and mother went to work. So.
I think we owe a lot to our parents for our dispositions and so forth. Yeah.
You do. Yeah.
Oh yes.
Such a blessing.
And I felt like the other thing is, I think when mother worked, I realized that I don't know at what point it dawned on me that because she was away, we had a lot of responsibility, but a lot of freedom, and we were not. She never nitpicked. She never criticized us. She just praised us. And of course, my husband would say, "She's ruined you because it gave you this inflated ego." But I think that's been a wonderful survival technique to have a strong ego. My first husband left. He wanted, to be alone, and
I think we both have. Yeah, we're both pretty.
So I think the fact that. We ended up with a lot of confidence was actually very fortunate.
Yeah.
It is.
I was very shy as a little kid, but somewhere along the line, I came out, somewhat, and and ended up being confident.
Yeah, that is.
Well, I certainly know people here, who are depressed and who are isolated, even though they're in spring ward. But it almost has to be their choice. I mean, because there's so much,
a lot of people don't, probably maybe their family won't let them have. But the psychiatric nurse Jim just thinks the world of her. She only comes to see him every 3 or 4 weeks. But instead of when I tell him I'm going up to see the daughter, it's stage 4 metastatic breast cancer, but doing great after 4.5 years. She didn't die in 2 years. She's still going strong. He sometimes would just make a terrible fuss. She's going to live, and that you'll be, in danger on the road. He tried to tell me you're no longer going to drive out of town, this kind of thing. Well, and I just go on. But this improved a lot, I think, with this psychiatric nurse visiting him. Now, I don't think she ever tells him what to do. It's the way they learn how to evoke the best or something, rather than because really and truly, there are times that I know he's not happy, like when I went to the beach all day yesterday. You get killed down there. Well, I got back, he was fine, but the thing is, I think he, of course, he wants me to outlive him. I'm sure of that, because I'm back and forth. But there are times that he accepts the news that I'm leaving town with equanimity. No fussing. At least he keeps his mouth shut. Makes me feel better not to be.
Exactly.
So it's fine. And I know deep down that he really cares about me. So it's, it's all right.
It would be really hard for him to handle.
Well, it's hard for him to handle the dependency is so difficult.
Right.
He desperately wants to control, and there's just not much he can control. So one thing he can attempt to control is house, because he doesn't have a lot in his life that he can control,
Right.
and I can understand
But I have
that.
wonderful support from all the people that work with him. They all just think I'm just.
Well, you are.
Well,
darling.
you are.
You are.
Over there 4 times a day.
You are, darling. You are great with them.
So,
But anyway,
Amazing.
I do appreciate them.
what are some other? You may have some other questions.
Well, I mean, you all said that you felt like isolation was maybe one of the biggest factors affecting.
And it's.
Can
I
y'all
think,
wait just a minute?
Mm-hmm.